Immediately go to the nearest room and lock and barricade the door. Stay low and stay quiet.
Spring of 2018 marked my last semester in high school. I'll be honest, it was a semester that I didn't take all that seriously. I didn't really care about my grades, and I would often skip with a couple of friends, if I remember correctly. It was a Friday when this all took place. I once again had plans to skip one of my classes. This time, it was with two of my friends who all called Tyler and Christian. We were all going to meet up behind the school, and from there walk to a nearby McDonald's. Now, the school typically had a few administrators and security guards outside, so to avoid them, we would walk this nature trail that went through a forest just behind the school building. We would have to walk further, but in our minds that was better than being caught. So we started our walk. We weren't even 5 minutes in when we came across this kid that I'd never seen before. Typically, I would see this as no big deal, writing it off as just another kid skipping. But this time, I wasn't so sure the kid was wearing jeans with a white t-shirt, both of which were extremely dirty. They were stained green and brown, the knees of his jeans especially, and his hair was full of leaves and dirt. It genuinely looked like the kid had been rolling around on the ground as we got closer. Christian recognized him as one of the lower classmen and struck up a conversation. I quickly picked up on how out of breath and nervous the kid seemed. He kept glancing over at me and Tyler. It felt like he was almost suspicious of us. Christian eventually asked what he was doing out here and why his clothes were so dirty. He responded saying he was skipping. But like the whole school day, this didn't exactly explain why he was so dirty. But okay, Tyler jumped in, jokingly, stating how it looked like you'd been camping out here. All of us started laughing. Well, all of us, except for the kid. He just stood there now with an almost angry look on his face. He then started looking around before looking back at us and saying, "Hey, do you guys want to see something?" We all sort hesitantly agreed. That's when the kid lifted his shirt to reveal a handgun tucked under his waistband. All of us instinctively took a couple of steps back. At this point, I really felt in danger. This was the first time in my life I'd seen a real gun in person. That's when Christian spoke up. "Dude, what are you doing? Where'd you get that?" The kid pointed down the trail behind him, explaining that he found it. Christian said he probably should just ditch it and get out of here. I was not at all expecting what the kid said next. "I don't think you guys understand. I'm about to be in a lot of trouble." Something about the way he said it was extremely unsettling me. Christian and Tyler all looked at each other. They didn't have to say anything. I knew exactly what we were about to do. Without warning, the three of us turned and ran as fast as we could off the trail and into the forest. We ran through dense trees for a good 5 minutes until we reached the school park parking lot. I will never forget the sight we were met with. There were police cars everywhere. We were sweating out of breath, and terrified, none of us knew what was going on. So in the midst of the chaos, the three of us literally just each ran home. Later, we would get more information on what actually happened. Apparently, the kid was a freshman and actually had been skipping the whole day. It turns out he stole the gun from a parked car in a nearby parking lot. He then made a post online threatening the school. I don't know exactly what platform it was posted to. I never saw it myself, but from what I've heard, the post was pretty graphic and disturbing. Some students of the school would see the post and report it to faculty from there. The school instantly went into lockdown. Police would be informed of the threats. And that's how so many of them shown up in the parking lot. So quick, the kid would later be spotted exiting the nature trail and walking towards the school. From there, he would be arrested. A lot of people say the kid hadn't been taking his medication for a week or so, and that's what caused him to do what he did. But I honestly don't know. These could just be rumors. Me, Tyler, and Christian would not inform anyone that we came into contact with the kid. We all agreed that we did not want to get roped up in all this. Looking back, based on what I now know about the kid and the threats he made, we were all in serious danger at the same time, though a part of me feels like we stalled the kid. Had we not slowed him down, and who knows if this show could have responded quick enough. But still, this experience is one that I wish I would not have had to go through. Again, I remember one really scary experience that I had back when I was in high school. I was a sophomore, and I used to ride the bus to and from school. Every day, one day, there was a pretty typical day of school. I went to all my classes, and nothing strange or unusual happened when the last bell of the day rang at 2:45 p.m. School was out and we could go home. I remember that this time was always crazy and would be a mad dash to get to the bus on time. A lot of kids went to my school, and in between every class the hallways would be packed. So after school it was always really tough to walk through the halls, and the buses left at just after 2:50. So you only had 5 minutes to get to them. On this day, I left my classroom and made my way to my locker. I had to go there to get something before going to the bus. This proved to be a mistake, because after literally running through the hallways and getting outside, I saw that I had missed the bus. I was really disappointed because I lived too far away from the school to walk home. I also didn't have any good friends with cars, so I would have to wait for my mom to get off of work and give me a ride. Fortunately for me, my mom got off of work at about 3:30 or 4 p.m. usually, so I would only have to wait at the school for about an hour or so. So after calling my mom, I went back inside of the school, not really knowing what I was supposed to do. I had never missed the bus before and had never stayed after school, unless I had a sports practice when I went back inside of the school. I saw that there were only a few students still inside, mostly just upperclassmen who drove themselves within probably 10 more minutes. The hallways became completely empty with just me walking down them. Now, my school did not really have any places to hang out at all. There were no study areas or couches or chairs set up. It was just hallways and classrooms, really. So I figured that I would just walk the halls while I waited for my mom to come to the school. I remember that I walked the halls for maybe 15 or 20 minutes. I made it towards the back end of the school, and things were completely empty. Then I heard the sound come over the school speakers. It was followed by an announcement that there was a lockdown, and that this was not a drill. At first, I was very confused. I didn't know that there would be lockdowns when school was not in session, and I didn't really know what I was supposed to do in this type of a situation. Obviously, I was not in class and didn't have a classroom to go to either. I looked around at the classrooms that I was passing by, and all their doors were closed and they seemed to be empty. I kept walking, thinking maybe I would just leave the school altogether. That's when I came around a corner, and way up down the hallway, I saw this guy wearing all black and a ski mask on his head. I knew that something was up there, and I quickly went back around the corner. I saw the bathrooms and quickly went inside them. Once I was there, I stopped and listened to see if the person would go near. I figured the bathrooms were really the only place I could hide for the lockdown. For a minute or two, things were pretty quiet and I didn't hear anything. Then I started to hear footsteps not far out in the hallway. They didn't really get that close though, but seemed to be a ways away moments later. I heard a very loud banging sound, like someone was smashing the lockers or something. I didn't know what exactly it was, but it made me feel on edge. These sounds went on for a while. Then, after about a minute or so of quiet, I heard more loud banging, followed by the sound of glass breaking. It was from a ways down the hallway, but I no longer felt safe hiding in the bathroom. When things quieted down a little bit again, I knew that I needed to get out of there. I carefully went to the entrance of the bathrooms and looked out into the hallway. I didn't see anything indicating that the sounds I heard must not have been within my sight. Then I quickly left the bathroom and ran the opposite direction to where I had heard the noises. I ran all the way until I got to the front of the school. When I got towards the lobby, I saw a police officer. He seemed a little bit surprised to see me, but I quickly told him how I had seen a guy in a ski mask and stuff. Another police officer who had entered the school told me to go outside the front door and they would handle it. I went out, and there were several police cars. I waited there while the police went inside and my mom got there. A little while later, I was able to go home with her, and there were a bunch of police cars still there and the police in the school. At that point, I went home and heard about the rest on the news. The police had ended up finding a guy inside and catching him. The man had simply walked inside the school wearing a ski mask. After hours, obviously was suspicious, and he got reported. I guess he went around and caused a bunch of damage to the school, breaking windows to several classrooms and breaking other equipment as well. That must have been what I had heard. It was a very scary situation, and I'm glad that I was able to get out of. I'm 22 years old, fresh out of college, and I recently got a job at my old high school as a sort of computer intern in the school basement. The basement of the school is very messy and disorganized, but there is a small 3'ers office that's actually very nice down there. It has 3 nice big desks, 2 mini fridges, a flat-screen TV mounted on the wall, and oh, so satisfying air conditioning. A luxury the students and teachers cannot enjoy in the school, and of course all the school servers and other computery stuff. I got the job because 3 of my old computer teachers flat out adored me. I could actually consider them as real friends. Not just teacher figures, so they all helped tremendously in landing me this job. It's been great until something that happened a few weeks ago. My 2 co-workers that shared the office with me, Dave and Gary, weren't in the office at the time. They were upstairs working on papers or whatever. I was eating my sandwich during my lunch break when I got a phone call from one of the women in the front office telling me the school was on lockdown and that somebody possibly armed had entered the school. There wasn't much that I could do other than turn off the lights. Because surprisingly, as nice as this little office was, it didn't have an actual door to it, just a big opening. And the door to the whole basement didn't even have a working lock for my own safety. I did turn off all the lights in the office and my computer screen. I kept my phone on the desk, texting both Gary and Dave, but they wouldn't respond. I sat down there in the dark, playing games on my phone for like 20 minutes, waiting for the call from up front to tell me to resume working. I had no idea what was happening. I couldn't hear what was going on upstairs from down here, but I was not allowed to make any calls until I was informed that the lockdown was over. Then the noisy basement door opened as the creaking echoed across the basement and into my office. I sat up from my seat wondering if I should to call out Gary or Dave. I was eager to get some info from them. Someone then came running down the stairs and their footsteps were approaching my office. I pushed away my chair and crawled under my desk. Somebody entered the office but did not turn on the lights. There was just silence. I can't even describe the fear I was experiencing. I felt like if I made one sudden noise, I'd be a dead man. Suddenly, my phone dinged as I got a text message. I felt my entire world shrivel up and die. At that one moment, as I clenched my teeth in fear, footsteps suddenly moved closer to me until I finally dove out from under the desk in capitulation, begging whoever it was not to kill me. And just then someone grabbed my arm and pulled me up. It was some guy in a red plaid button-up jeans and a reddish-black cap. He told me it's okay, I'm just down here hiding with you. What's going on up there? I whispered to him. He kind of ignored my question and asked me if there's an exit down here. I told him, yeah, around that way, before he could do anything else. I asked him, who are you? There was a brief moment of silence before he started explaining. He was coming in to pick up his son when a teacher told him to hide after his explanation. I checked my phone and saw the text I received was from Dave. It said, dude, this is crazy. Some guy with a gun shot Mr. Buckley. He's wearing a red shirt and hat. Whatever you do, don't come upstairs. I was about to reread that text out loud to the man until I realized I looked up and felt my stomach sink. The man seemed to catch on to my suspicious stare, panicking. All I could think to do was to run for the upstairs. A gunshot echoed through the basement and I could hear the bullet ricochet off something metal in the darkness. But thank God the bullet missed me and I made it upstairs. Fortunately, police were waiting at all exits, including the basement exit, and caught the man the second he opened the door. More good news. Our teacher, Mr. Buckley, survived the gunshot. It was later determined that the man and Mr. Buckley had some beef for whatever reason, but that was never ever revealed. All we know is that Mr. Buckley couldn't have done anything that would have warranted this kind of reaction, and I know that the sound of that gunshot When I was in high school, I remember that one time we were going to have a planned lockdown drill. I remember that we would have these about once or twice a year. Sometimes they would even tell us like the day before that we were having a drill. I think that was so nobody would be alarmed by it and worry that it was real. So, on this one day, I knew that we were having a lockdown drill during the 5th period, which was the last one of the day. The drill would usually consist of an announcement, and then the teachers turning off the lights to their classroom and locking the doors. Sometimes they would make the students huddle in the back of the classroom, other times we would just sit in our desks. My last period of the day was usually pretty boring, but I did have one of my best friends in that class, Ryan, with me this particular time. I remember that after 4th period, Ryan said that we should skip 5th period at this moment. We had both completely forgot about the lockdown drill. I just remember that I knew we weren't doing much in the class. And so did Ryan. It was basically like a work day where we would just work on homework assignments and stuff. So, being immature high school kids, we decided to skip class and head home early. We went to our lockers to get our stuff and took our time. As the bells sounded, indicating the class was now in session. We were in no rush because the school was not super strict, and we figured we could just walk right out after we left our lockers and started down a hallway. I remember that we heard the lockdown drill announcement. That's when we both remembered it. We figured that for the drill, we had better not be out in the hallway because a hall monitor might see us and make us go to class. Plus, we were sort of far off from the nearest exit doors to the school. So we decided to go find a bathroom until the lockdown drill was over. However, on the way there, we soon heard footsteps behind us. We turned a corner and didn't look back, assuming it to be a hall monitor. So we walked faster and then turned another corner. When we did this, it sounded like the footsteps behind us were going faster as well. We quickly made our way to a bathroom and then went inside. Ryan went in one of the stalls and I went in another. We didn't close the doors to the stalls, but they stayed mostly closed on their own. Then we stood on the toilet so our feet couldn't be seen on the ground. A few moments later, we heard footsteps quickly approaching outside in the hallway. Whoever it was actually entered the bathroom, which caused me to be very nervous. And I'm sure Ryan was as well. We just stood there as quiet as can be the person, then entered the bathroom very briefly, and then walked out pretty fast. It was like they just looked in really quick to see if anyone else was inside of it, and then continued on. Now, Ryan and I both left our hiding spots a little bit quick. Probably like 10 seconds later, we had left the stalls and started to walk out. When we left the bathroom, we noticed that the person was still in the hallway. It was a man, and he had made it almost to the other end of the hall, and he was walking facing away from us. But we realized that this likely was not a hall monitor he was wearing, just a black jacket and jeans, which is not something that a school employee would wear after we got out into the hallway. We noticed the man stop and then start to turn around, ran, and I both quickly went in the other direction of the hall and then turned the corner. We started walking down the next hallway very quickly, just trying to get away from the guy as we continued, though we soon saw someone else up ahead. This was a teacher that we both recognized. It was Mr. Herbert, and he saw us and asked us why we weren't in class, saying that a lockdown drill was going on. We told him that we were sorry and would go to class. As Mr. Herbert walked with us, escorting us to our classroom, we told him about the other man in the hallway. He didn't seem to have any idea who we were talking about. and said that he would find out soon. We got to our classroom and were LED inside, and several minutes after that there was another announcement stating that the school was now having a real lockdown. Several times, they said that this was not a drill anymore. This lockdown lasted for about an hour until it finally ended and the school got out. At about the same time, we learned that the man we had seen in the hallways was not supposed to be in the school, and he was arrested for trespassing after hiding in the school. Nobody knew what his intentions were. I think it's really crazy how he just happened to be there during a lockdown drill. Did he somehow know we were having a drill and did it on purpose so nobody would suspect him or notice him? I don't really think so, but it makes for a crazy coincidence. I'm also really glad that he didn't look farther into the bathroom where Ryan and I were hiding. We both learned a valuable lesson that day, not to skip class. And I don't believe either of us ever skipped again after. This is something you guys have been requesting the hell out of for a long time. It took a lot of time, but I finally found 3 stories that take place during school lockdowns. It was a typical, boring day in calculus only. It was Friday, 7th period, meaning the week was almost over, and spring break would finally be upon us. So everybody was getting antsy in their seats. I could tell we have a test that day, like a lot of my friends did with their other teachers, so our teacher in the middle of class just decided to start playing games with us on sporkle.com. He was a very laid-back teacher like that as we were doing some brand logo quiz on Sporl. I remember the exact moment it happened, right after my friend answered a question. I remember the exact answer to Adidas. The dean's voice came through the loudspeaker. He sounded panicked and frantic as he told all the teachers this was not a drill. And to go into lockdown, I actually got the chills, and I got goosebumps on my arms, as our usually laid-back teacher, too, seemed panicked as he ran to turn off the lights and ushered us to the back corner of the room. We all sat in silence for about 2 minutes, and then the usual buzzing that came from a panel in the back of the room ceased, indicating that the school must have cut all the power. We all looked at each other, realizing this must be serious. A few more minutes of waiting. Later, we heard a man screaming at the top of his lungs, coming down the hallway. 2 girls in the class actually started crying, which made all of us even more scared as the screaming got closer to the classroom. The lunatic-sounding man started banging on the lockers while screaming, "I'll kill all of you." It was at that moment that I started to fear for my life. My teacher shushed us as we all looked at each other to see and that's when one of the crying girls screamed, "No." The banging on the door only grew worse as the man started screaming. "Open up." 2 of the girls in the class were crying out loud. Now it felt like an eternity that the man was pounding at the door. But eventually, he finally continued down the hallway, screaming like a mentally insane person until we could not hear him anymore. I'd say 10 minutes later. Though it felt like half an hour given the situation, the dean came back on the loudspeaker explaining the situation, which was surprising for him to do. He explained that some apparently mentally unstable person entered the building and assaulted the woman sitting at the front desk, causing her to flee the building, screaming, and staff wasn't sure if the man was armed or not. Now, this was before the school had cameras or could afford proper security, so the school was wide open to something like this happening. The staff had done a sweep of all the hallways and classrooms and couldn't find him. So the dean instructed the teachers to resume teaching, but to keep all the doors locked, and to not let any students leave for any reasons. The most disturbing part, however, is that one of the janitors working the night shift found the man sleeping in one of the storage closets near the back end of the school. And according to rumors that were spread by my peers, sticking out of his pocket was a